How do people in Britain feel about this? Britain, which is talking not about exiting the euro because you're not part of it, but the EU entirely.
Well, of course, most British people, I guess, like people everywhere, are completely bemused and befuddled by all this. And of course, they're not experts on currency regimes, so they just see the mess. And they're
so is it because the Greeks are? Is it because the Greeks are deluded that they want to stay in the euro, or is there something in it for them?
Oh, no, I've got a very serious point to make about this. And for a start, there's a big difference between the euro and the EU. I mean, it's perfectly possible, I think, for Greece to leave the euro and stay in the EU. You know, people virtually never do vote or support changes of currency regime. If a vote had been taken in 1931 about whether Britain should stay on the gold standard or leave, I guarantee you there would have been a very large majority for staying on the gold standard, which would have been precisely the wrong thing to have done. Similarly, in 1992, when Britain was in the European exchange rate mechanism, all of the newspapers, the so-called experts, the government, the opposition, everyone, programs like this, was saying, well, we've got to stay in the European exchange rate mechanism, there's no alternative. So similarly, if you'd conducted a poll, British people would have said we must stay in the ERM. But of course, that was completely the wrong thing to have done. So I'm not remotely surprised by this. On the whole, populations don't vote for changes of currency regime. Have to be foisted upon them.
All right, and again, what impact will there be in Britain on what happens in Greece in terms of the conversation you're having there about a Brexit?
Well, that's, I think, a very good point. I don't think the impact is huge, but I suspect the direction of travel is to increase Euroscepticism in Britain. The point is that the euro is, I think, the biggest project that the EU has undertaken. And a lot of people in Britain look at it and think it's been pretty much a failure. We, of course, didn't join it. That looks like being the right decision from Britain's point of view. And the way the Greek situation is developing, I mean, whether you think the euro is a good thing or not for the rest of Europe, it's looking, isn't it, as though it's a pretty disastrous situation for Greece, and both sides have handled this very badly. It doesn't say a great deal about, I would argue, the German government, the European institutions, perhaps the French government. So it doesn't say a great deal in favour of the way the Greek government has managed things. It looks like a train crash. So I think the reaction in Britain would be to say, look, this is the biggest thing that the EU has ever done. It's turning out to be a complete disaster. What does that say about the nature of the European project, and should we be involved in this at all? I think it will strengthen the possibility of an outvote in Britain.